Sounds good. All right. Well, hello, everybody. And so this week we have Deborah Pettit with us, and we're going to talk all about editing and polishing up our work so we can better serve our readers. So, welcome, Deborah. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you.
So, tell us a little bit about yourself and your writing journey. What has that looked like?
Well, my name is Deborah Pettit, and I've been writing really ever since I was about 12, maybe even before that. I think I turned in a paper to my fourth grade teacher that was like 10 pages long. I feel really bad for her.
That's
But I
impressive.
remember, yeah, oh yeah.
I can't get a fourth grader to write 10
I'm
pages.
sure it didn't make any sense at all. But at 12, I remember writing in my bedroom by the window. And I would turn off all the lights. I would sit on my cylindrical plastic toy box and I would create this poetry. Um, and in the morning, I could not read a lick of what I wrote, not at all. But ever since I've had writing as part of my life. Um, whether I've been working on essays in college or chronicling my adventures around the world, creating stories, of course, and or even jotting down stuff in my gratitude journal. Um, so last year, I published my first book, The Heroes of the Taduma Forest, and it's the first in a series of four children's books. And I'm looking forward to editing the sending off the next one to the editor, hopefully soon.
Very nice. Did you self-publish that book?
I did have kind of a hybrid publisher. Um, I It took a while for me to find somebody that I really liked, and so I went with her. She actually helps to do everything, the cover and everything like that. She's editor, and it was amazing to work with her because she taught me so much about the publishing process. And so, yeah, I definitely, I don't recommend all of the hybrid publishers, but I do recommend her. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Not lots of research required, right?
Yes,
To figure out
very
what
much.
know exactly what you're paying for and what you're not. But it can be a great option.
Yes.
So you mentioned travel, and I know in your bio you've talked about you were in the Middle East for a while. What did all that look like? What have been some of your traveling adventures, and what did you do in the Middle East?
Well, I lived there for 3 years. I taught kindergarten at a private school. And really, I just learned a ton about communication because I think we take it for granted when we live in the West and everybody can understand us and it's no big deal to talk to the neighbor. But I found very quickly learning from my kindergartners how to say my colors in another language. And it really humbles you. It does. But it also teaches you how to communicate at, I think, a deeper level than what you might be able to do just on a day-to-day basis. Um, really, you're sharing a piece of yourself with them, and they're sharing a piece of themselves with you. Um, in the Middle East, I learned to communicate through gestures and words, of course, as many as you can. And then sometimes just a smile. I remember being on a bus, and this woman had a baby, and she came and sat next to me, and we could barely understand each other, but we just smiled, and it just like you can make connections that way, and it was neat. Um, but there are times when communication is very needed. Words, clear, articulate words are so needed. And I have actually a funny story of a time that I failed in communicating. My very first day teaching, I made a kid cry.
Oh,
Yeah.
Carrie's raising her hand
um,
like, yep, been there.
So I was one of those teachers that had so many plans. I was going to have prizes, I was going to have helpers, I was going to have lots of games. And on the first day, I asked in alphabetical order the first kid on the list to be my helper and pass out some papers. He immediately started crying. And it took me a moment to realize that he didn't understand anything that I was saying. Um, so I threw out the helper idea. we did not have helpers that year, but we both of us worked really hard together, and he learned to speak. He learned to read, and he learned to write in English that year. And it was so neat to see the transition from having no language of English. He used another language, but this language he had nothing, and then to see him blossom and be able to communicate so beautifully, it was just, you cannot express just how amazing that makes a teacher feel. um, So I love partnering with people to develop their communication skills. Yeah, love it.
That's so fun how God used that experience to even give you a passion for, you already had a passion for writing, but for writing clearly and
Yeah,
effectively so that you can communicate, which is really kind of what editing is all about. It's how can I make this message, whether it's nonfiction or fiction, as clear as possible so I'm communicating what I want to communicate, right?
exactly. That was beautifully summed up.
So you didn't know their language, but you were teaching them English.
Yes. A lot of
Ah,
them want to learn English and then come to the States or Europe to go to college, to go to
mm,
school.
interesting. So then, did any of your traveling there and anywhere else that you've traveled, has that impacted your fiction stories? Like, are there aspects from some of those cross-cultural experiences that have made it into your fiction books?
I think so. Sometimes I think we don't realize just how much we've learned over the years. And
Mhm.
then I stop to think and I go, wow, a lot of meeting new people and meeting really interesting people um, has translated over. I've got some really fun characters in my stories, and I can pull out a few real life people that are similar. You know, Places that I've gone that have just been incredible. Just recently went to a forest, and the heroes of the Tuduma Forest obviously is set in a forest, make believe forest. And I went just recently and had so many ideas of, oh my goodness, look at this. Oh, I could describe it like this. And it was a lot of fun. So, yeah, I think a lot of my travels end up in my book for sure.
Yeah, definitely. That would be fun pulling characters from all different countries.
Yes.
Gives you a broader spectrum to pull ideas from, I'm sure.
Yeah, for sure.
So then when did you start editing and when did that whole process begin for you?
Um, my editing journey began in 2001. I tutored English at a local college, and part of my job was actually editing papers for my peers. But since then, I've tutored and taught students of all ages, preschool all the way through college. And yeah, if you've ever helped somebody with their writing, you know it's just an exhilarating feeling to see people create something with just a little assistance, you know? People, I do think they have a hard time noticing their flaws in their writing, but they also have a hard time noticing their unique voice and their message. Sometimes I think our message can get muddied with a lot of words or not be able to clarify what we're trying to say. And I love helping people to see through that and kind of clean up the muddied waters so that their message can shine.
That's a neat way of looking at it. I think sometimes you look at editing as just this slog through grammatical rules and tenses and vocabulary, but to see it as a getting to the heart of the message of what you're trying to communicate so that you can communicate clearly and have your voice come across sounds much more appealing.
It is, and a lot of people, yeah, I've talked to so many authors and they don't like editing. Some people say it's hard to edit, and some people say it's really boring. But most of them actually despise, like I've heard people say, I despise editing. And what's worse than editing your own paper is having others edit or critique them.
Yes.
But I do try to teach a different perspective. Um, have you guys heard of the Michelangelo saying? It's a famous saying. I saw the angel in the marble and carved until I set him free. And I love that. I'm going to make your day today. Most rough drafts stink. Who's happy to hear that? I know I
Right.
am, because it's hard for us sometimes to think, oh, we read these books and they're just so wonderful, and wow, that author could really say something so beautiful, right? But then we look at our rough draft and we go, oh man, we're not that good. No, no, no. That author had to edit a lot as well. And most successful authors have learned to accept editing as part of their job. It's part of the journey. And I think of our rough draft as that stone that a sculptor has to work with in order to make a beautiful piece of art. The rough draft has to be worked and worked and worked. Um, so yeah, I do think that we're given the opportunity to speak truth into people's lives. Um, we have a message, but my message cannot be conveyed if my writing is jumbled or like grammatically incorrect, right? Or just plain hard to read. Um, so I feel like if we think of editing as maybe a quest or an adventure, um, it could be something that makes it a little bit more exciting for us, that this is a quest. We're looking for our message. We're looking in between kind of the muddy water, like I said. Um, and maybe it's our time to slow down, to breathe, and to clarify that message that we want the world to know, right? Uh,
Mhm.
and then our words would be more poignant and our readers would definitely be more blessed.
I love it. And I think, maybe we have this impression that the writers who are, professional and who have made it like their first drafts are wonderful and amazing. And it's just mine that are cruddy. But I've heard from editors that like you would be shocked at the things that, the first round, even from someone who has done tons and tons of writing and has published so many books, that their work still needs a lot of editing.
Yeah.
And not to think that we're the only ones who can't get it right the first time on. But that I love the Michelangelo quote too. That's a great way of looking at it, that it's still just a block of stone and we need to set the message free inside of it. So, yeah.
I like that.
So you teach or have taught at least, kids and stuff in person, and you also have a YouTube channel where you teach editing. How did that come about and what does that look like?
Well, about a year ago, I just started, well, it was maybe in January of 2024. I started watching a lot more videos about writers and different authors' videos, and author tube is what they call it. And yes. And so they started saying, oh, you should get a YouTube channel. And I thought, well, oh, okay, I'm wanting to publish my first book. I should get on there. And I had no idea. Like I was just like vlogging, you know. I would sit down, chit chat about my book, and that was about it. And then I started going, like, why can't I on YouTube start sharing about my editing journeys and about my the things that I've learned through the years about editing. And so I started doing that and I absolutely loved it. I had so much fun with teaching editing that I thought, oh, well, this will be what the majority of what my channel is all about. So it's been fun. And so it's been, yeah, about a year now that I've been doing it.
Nice. Nice. So, do you have a particular process that you use when you edit your own books?
Well, yes, I do. But if you got 100 authors in one room and you ask them what their process was, you'd get 100 different answers. So it's not, oh, this is how you're supposed to do it, not at all. But like some authors swear by editing as they go. So they'll write a chunk of their, let's say novel, and then the next day they'll edit it, and then they'll continue to write. And that's how they do it every day. Personally, I don't do that because reading my rough draft and trying to fix it before I'm done with the rough draft really discourages me. I don't know about you guys, but it
Yes.
really does. So what I end up doing, you know what? I get everything from my mind onto the paper as fast as I can, and it might take a while to do it, months, whatever, but just get it on the paper. And then I I try not to interrupt the flow. When I'm completely done with it, rough draft done, I take a break. Day, two, maybe even 50. I take as much time as possible. And I know some of you, I know you guys do some blog posts, and like you've kind of got to get them out there, fast. So you may not have 50 days to wait, but even just one day is better than nothing. Um, for writing books, I feel like 3 months is probably a good break to have. I remember I got so busy writing my third and fourth books that when I came back to edit my second, I it I had fresh eyes. It was like somebody else had written the book, and I was able to find so many more mistakes that way. So I really feel like the farther you get from your writing, the more objective you can be. But I start editing by just reading through my manuscript. I only highlight problem areas. So I'm usually on the laptop when I do it. So I just end up highlighting yellow. Whatever I don't like, I'll read it and I'll highlight yellow. Um, and I try not to change anything until I go through the whole manuscript. Once I finish reading it all the way through, then I'll do my content editing. And I won't get too much into that because Stephanie did a great job talking about content editing. And if you missed the video, you should watch it. It's really good. But I start with the big picture. Did I have any plot holes, character inaccuracies? Or maybe sometimes I'll have like a whole paragraph or a whole page that I have to delete. It's kind of sad, but sometimes you got to do it. I fix all the big stuff. Then I move on to copy editing and proofreading. That includes grammar, spelling, punctuation, sentence formatting, all that stuff. But I don't mess with the sentences until I get the big picture stuff done. So content editing has to come first. So let's say I work really hard on getting, you know, all the words pristine in one paragraph, and I'm doing thesaurus or whatever, and I get it all done, and then I have to delete it because it's like, no, wait, my character wouldn't say that or whatever, and you have to delete the whole thing.
Right.
So I do big picture stuff first, and then I start with going through sentence by sentence. Um, so I've heard so many authors complain that it takes time, so much time to edit. And personally, I think it's worth the time to edit thoroughly. And that's what we're going to talk about on Thursday. But yeah, if we don't edit our work, communication will break down and our poor reader won't understand anything we're trying to communicate. But if we invest our time into editing, we can produce a clear message and it'll bless those around us, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, and it is a great point that, you ask 100 different writers what their process is, you're going to get 100 different answers. But I think it's fascinating to hear other people's processes because sometimes we get stuck in the rut that like, okay, there's one way to do this,
Yeah.
and I have to figure out the one way. But oh no, there's lots of different ways, and we might take a piece from this person's process and a piece of this person's
Yeah,
process to create, what works for us.
exactly.
And so you're talking about fiction. So are you a plotter or a pantser? Do you plot ahead
I'm
of time?
like an ex-pantser that is a plotter.
You're
So when
recovering pantser.
I
Okay.
don't know if you guys, when I did this, like the writing stuff when I was 12, you ever
Mhm.
do the little web and the lines, right? Oh, mine was just like a few words on one paper. I don't know if my teacher ever thought, God, this is a terrible outline, but that's how I did it in school. And then I just gave that up and just wrote and wrote and wrote. And then when I was doing um, the Heroes of the Tudumo Forest, I actually I sat down in a government office. It was my muse. And I sat down and I just typed on my phone. I typed up my rough draft of my story.
Oh, your
And it
phone?
was on my phone.
That's
It was
awful.
terrible. So I got in like 4 hours waiting for, the government official or whatever. Yeah, exactly, on my phone. So I think we waited for 4 hours and I just did the whole book in 4 hours. Of course, it was just awful. And that it was like a skeleton of the book. Um, once I sat down to start editing, it was really hard. And I had to rewrite this thing so many times. But it was wonderful because I think that really stopped me, and I thought, okay, wait, maybe I should be plotting.
There should be a
So
plan here somewhere.
yeah, I should do some outlining. So then I started outlining, and I won't go back to pantsing ever again. I love outlines. I don't get now. I usually do a few pages to outline. Uh, it's a lot better than the web, but I'm not one of those. I'll write 30,000 words in my outline. For a 70,000 word novel, I'm not going to do that. But I'm a lot more of an outliner now.
Right. So there's some structure in place, not every little detail, but you know the
Yeah.
general
Yeah.
flow of things. That's got to make the editing process easier also
It's a
because
lot
you
easier.
hopefully don't have enormous plot holes and you went off in this tangent in that direction. And yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So, well, tell us a little bit about what you're going to be teaching on Thursday,
Um,
the sneak
well,
peek.
on Thursday, let's see. I just am kind of reiterating the importance of editing and like why I think it's important, not just to use Grammarly, but to actually for us to be able to edit ourselves. And just giving like tips and tricks to the biggest issues that I see in editing. Um, but editing is it's not for me, it's for my reader.
Mhm.
And I just think like if a little girl is confused while she's reading my book because I didn't take time to clarify my message, then I failed.
Hmm.
um, so the theme of the Heroes of the Taduma Forest is courage in the midst of adversity. But if I'm not getting that across to my reader, then I need to rework my manuscript, because if my message is diluted, then what's really the purpose of writing if I can't communicate that, like my theme, to my reader, right? Um, can I tell you a story before bringing this thought home?
Sure.
So my mother took an English sign language class back in the 80s, and I grew up finger spelling, like A, B, C,
Mhm.
right? Um, in high school, I became friends with two deaf sisters, and I finger spelled everything I said to them. Now, I don't know if you've ever, when you were a kid, did you ever play a game like spell everything that you say?
Right.
It's it's really hard to do.
Yes. Yes.
Yeah. So I decided to take a sign language class in college, and I absolutely loved every minute of it. But years later, and I was able to communicate with the sisters much better.
Yes. Yes.
But years later, after coming back to the States from the Middle East, I wanted a change, and I decided to go back to school to become an interpreter for the deaf. And I graduated a 2-year program for sign language interpreting. And I had the privilege of serving the deaf community for several years at a local college. I interpreted for one student. She actually suffered from a disease that it left her without much use of her hands and no use of her legs or her voice.
Oh, wow.
So she had a computer talk for her, but she really liked signing better because sometimes it was faster, sometimes it was not. So, as a new interpreter, I just expected that I would have more hurdles through the communication between her and I. But miraculously, I was able to interpret what she signed. almost every time. And it was God. Every time I think of it, I'm like, it was him. But my hope now, looking back, is that in everything I write, I want to connect with my audience the same way I connected with her. And it takes a lot of hard work, but it's worth it.
That's beautiful. I love it. I love it. Thanks for that. Well, some people had some questions in the chat. I don't know if anybody wants to unmute and ask. They were asking the name of who was the hybrid publisher that you used that you liked so much?
River Shore Books.
River Shore Books. Okay, cool. Anybody else have questions for Deborah? And the teaching on on Thursday will be an hour earlier. So the time that we typically, so 2 Central and however else that translates to all the other times. I'm not even try. So
So when you say you're a plotter now, do you know, like you said this was a four series book that you're putting together, that you're writing. Are you like, do you have the scope for each book? Did you end up outlining the whole series at once and said, oh yeah, it's too big for one book or two books, it's got to be four? How did you figure that out?
That's a great question. I kind of thought just at the very beginning, oh, it would be fun to do more than just the one book. So then I thought, well, how many? Well, I don't want to be known like as the fairy lady or something like that for the rest of my life. So I think four might be a good number. But I will tell you, I was on the way to a retreat and I'm driving, and all of a sudden, all of these ideas just like flooded my brain. And I grabbed my phone and I hit record and I just started talking to myself. And I got all four main outlines. It was, again, it's more like a skeleton, right? It's just the main ideas of all four books right then and there. It took me about 2 hours there and then 2 hours coming back home after the retreat. And that was really amazing. That doesn't happen very often. It's usually a lot of work to get the plot going and really have good solid ideas. I'm writing a novel that's not going that smoothly. But yeah, for all four books happen that way. Yeah.
And are they middle grade or?
They are, I gear it toward girls ages 5 to 11.
Okay.
That was the first book is more, a little bit younger. And then the second, third, and fourth book will probably be geared more to 8 to 12-year-olds, somewhere around there.
So did you know much about that genre when you started putting the outline?
Not really. No, but I did a lot of research. Yep.
So you taught elementary school or
Yeah.
yeah, I did as well. And so I did a lot of teaching of writing and all of the the really rules of construction is what I would think of it. I feel like sometimes in creative writing, you have to let some of those rules go. And I know that's kind of a transition for me, not in having the commas in the right place and that kind of thing, but like how many sentences in your paragraph and different things
Yeah.
like that. How do you address that? And then what would be your editor's eye on helping a writer kind of get over that? I don't know, almost like it's like this wall or boundary that you feel like you have to cross to get into. What's that space?
It's
Space
a
to
mental block. Is that what you were? I
well,
was.
a mental
It
block
seemed like
maybe,
I
but
just said mental block.
yeah,
Like that's.
yeah,
Yeah.
Is that what
maybe,
you
but
were
yeah,
going, Carrie?
kind of. I'm not sure. I was
All right,
trying to
I'm
find the right
middle-aged.
word for it, but yeah.
I'm middle-aged and I can go on like that for minutes on end trying to remember the right word. So I was just trying to help.
Are you saying that I'm old, Space?
You know,
I'll understand.
no, I'm saying I'm old, Carrie. Anyways.
Yeah, I think that we have to have, you know, rules to be able to communicate for sure. But I do think that people who have the rules, but then they're missing the creativity part. And it's funny because I know, like, my husband is with a lot of the creativity part, but then I have the rules, and we make a really good couple. but we have to balance it, right? Too many rules and you get rigid. Too much creativity without the limits of how to communicate. People just don't understand it. You end up getting run-on sentences, right?
Mhm.
And so yeah, I think that balance is very good, Carrie, for sure.
So do you have any editor's tips and tricks for getting yourself over that hurdle of being locked in by the rules of grammar? To be
Yeah,
able
I
to let
think
that
just going on, you know, maybe taking a picture off the internet and going wild with it, and just describe everything you're seeing, and just, you know, maybe describe characters that you would never think of, real off the wall stuff, and kind of letting the craziness out, I would say. And then, you know, I mean, then you can kind of rein yourself in a little bit after you let it all out, you know, onto the paper. Then you go, okay, well now, you know, and it's been funny because I've done that and gone, let me think of the weirdest thing that I could think of and just go for it. And then I actually will use some of that. I go, oh, actually, that little piece was really good. You know? So
Right.
sometimes you just kind of, you know, go crazy. Sometimes we just have to, right?
Well, I think that that's a good thing, like just like we would do with our students, give them a free write, and then you know, and then you go back and make something of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why we have cruddy first drafts. So
Yeah.
and that's okay.
Oh, sorry. You said the theme of your first book is courage in the midst of adversity. What are the themes of your second, third, and fourth?
Oh, let's see. Okay. The second one, I would say the theme is more of um, who is my friend, and how to be a good friend. Yeah, let's leave it at the second one. We'll talk about the third and fourth later.
Sounds good. Anybody else? All right. Well, this has been fun, Deborah, getting to know you a little bit and hearing about your passion for editing. And I love the perspective that the point is to serve our readers and to make our message as clear as possible, not to drag us through the doldrums of commas and em dashes and
Yeah,
but
exactly.
to have a clear message and have that come across. So yeah, looking forward to your teaching on Thursday. So
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
so thanks, ladies, for being here, and we will see you hopefully on Thursday.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.